Welcome.
Hey, we've never introduced ourselves, Mr. Garza.
Well, we can start with that if you'd like.
Well, I'm just wondering. I got a friend, Kristen, too. She asked me what had been going on, so I told her that, the forum was trying this out. She says, I want to listen. So we may have our first listener.
Well, actually, they made a mistake to uploading the show last week, so it is actually playing like right now. Last week's whatever we did before is playing like even as we speak.
Oh, wow.
So it was a bit delayed, and the first half of the video version was last week, and the next half will be next week. But anyway, here we.
So does that mean we're in two places at once right now?
Yes, we are.
Woo!
We're on the radio, live, sort of, and we're on the radio, not live, sort of.
All right. Well, you're the magical.
Yeah, okay. So anyway,
So what about elections? I mean, here we are a week later, and it looks like the Democrats held on to the Senate, unless something crazy happens. Um, the state went Democrat, mostly.
mhm.
Um, we got a Democratic Congresswoman from our area.
Yes,
That was good.
Yeah. I don't know. So it looked at our sheriff is Democrat still. Um, I guess just because the Democrats win doesn't mean that it's good for immigration,
no, not necessarily.
right? I mean, there's an extreme faction of the Republicans. That's actually what I had read for tonight. There's a couple of interesting articles. One of them was after the last election, the 20, and it's an analysis of the effect of on the Republicans on the election, but is particularly on immigration and several issues, but on immigration. And it reminded me that it wasn't too long ago that the Republicans were pushing for immigration reform, and the Democrats were more recalcitrant
Hmm.
about it. I think we mentioned that last week, but it's another reminder that it is not a party issue unless they make it so. So anyway, so that's that. I'll look for the articles and I'll share them on screen whenever we want to come back to that.
Hmm.
Is record on yet or no?
I'm recording. Yeah.
Oh, okay, because I'm not seeing the typical red button. So
Yeah.
Sure.
No, I'm recording. Yeah, I was reading something to fill in time at the end of the show since it wasn't an hour long. That sort of spoke to the fact that there is more nuance in the way that immigrants tend to view the topic of immigration than the either or black or white kind of thing that the media tends to present it. Like, well, immigrants are of course totally on the side of all new immigrants and against Republicans because Republicans are against immigration. That sort of narrative that tends to be out there really doesn't represent the fact that there are a lot of immigrants who are very uncomfortable with the notion of, say, open borders, for example, because they feel that the people that really want to be here, who are coming to work and who are, the quote unquote good people, will get here one way or the other, and they should be taken care of. But that there are a lot of people that aren't necessarily someone you'd want here, that if you just open up borders and just let people roam in, they're going to come too. And, because a lot of them are fleeing like gang violence and things like that. So they don't want that stuff to follow them here. So they want there to be some kind of control, some kind of gatekeeping, to put it like that, that goes on that keeps out people that shouldn't be here. And that, so the messages that they see in the media are sometimes confusing and difficult for them. So I thought that was an interesting take because it makes a lot of sense.
Right, but there's no chance we're going to go to open borders.
No.
However, many politicians, some letters to the editor and some editorial writers say that, but it's just not the case.
Yeah, it's not the case, but people reacting to advertising and media are going to pick that stuff up and go, "Oh, Democrats are for open borders and Republicans are for sensible, border policy and all that sort of thing." And that's kind of confuses the issue. Not to mention that also when you include like Latinos in a general way in this, you have to deal with the fact that in Florida there's a whole different crop of Latinos down there from completely different places with completely different backgrounds who have a very different attitude about immigration and uh, and what kind of government they're trying to get away from and what kind of government they would like to see in the place that they move to. So that it's, again, just as it's a nuanced question for immigrants generally, it's also a nuanced question for quote unquote Latinos because they're, once again, we are not a universal type. There's lots of different kinds of people and lots of different attitudes and such that goes on.
So I was part of I listened to a very detailed breakdown when Obama won. I happened to be in D.C. and there was a very able individual breakdown as to why Obama did well. Let's come back to Florida, uh, and he broke down the numbers as to the Cuban uh, immigrants that had been very Republican and how they were aging out and their kids were more on the Democrat side. You could say though that today the older people won along with a wave or a section of the Venezuelans. What I'm impressed by on the nuancing the Latino vote is that the border, the Texas side uh, was also, or seems to be, uh, well, seems to be voting Republican. The Republicans put up a candidate that was Latina, and she was pro closing the border or controlling the border more. So uh, the Mexican Latino side has usually been more pro-immigrant, but this election is showing that they, at least in some places, they're happier with the Republican line, or at least the Republican candidates, usually Latino, or in this case a Latina that was very, well, I wouldn't say Trumpian necessarily, but definitely not on the Democratic side of the issue.
Mm-hmm. But she lost.
Yeah, but the fact that she was, that she hopped so fast, so
Mm-hmm.
high, was for me the surprising part because I thought Southern Texas was symbiotically related to the people across the border because that's my experience.
Mm-hmm.
The family is split by the line uh, with 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 all kinds of implications. That's what happened to my family on the El Paso Juarez line, and to this day, I would say probably half of the family is now north of the border. But as I've done my genealogy, it looks like I have always had lots of people on the U.S. side of the border. I
Mm.
mean, to the point of 1800s, in which the line did really cross. the communities in which my families lived. Um, and so now I don't find it surprising to find births on this side of the border. And my generation thought that we were the first ones.
Hmm.
And now my documentation shows that no, we've had the immigration on both sides, in both directions for a while. So I guess I made it a little bit too personal there, but the results of elections. I want to show you something that relates to what you said. Let me share screen for a second. Uh, present now. I'll present the window, and I will pick this one. This article done by the Cato Institute, or done for them. I had contact with them before, early on, but the gist of this article, I will put it in the I guess in the chat in case you want to come back to it or cite it. This comes from the 18 election, 4 years ago. But its analysis basically says that given a bunch of other factors, if you control for them, that immigrants do tend to be more Democrat, and that the Republicans have should have a genuine fear that immigrants will not be Republican. And the interesting thing for me has been that on the Mexican American side, I forget who said it, but it was an analysis of the Mexican vote, that Mexicans are really very Republican. They just don't know it when
Reagan.
they come. Was that Reagan?
Reagan said that, yeah.
Yeah. And on the conservative side, I mean, we may be very fast on working, earning our money, a Republican side on that. You pull yourself up. And we may be very Catholic, but in many ways we are so traditionalist and so conservative that we do fit a section of the Republican outlook. Anyway, this article basically argues that after that election and what happened to them, to the Republicans in the 18 election, that this was not unusual that the immigrants will move to the Democratic ticket. I guess I had not thought that as thoroughly as this article brings it up. So anyway, I think it does relate a little bit to what's been happening in the politics of this election.
Yeah, the difficulty, I suppose, is that maybe when Reagan said that, it made sense. But the Republican Party has moved from that family, country, God sort of notion since that time. They've slid off to the right in very strange ways, to the point where now there's a lot of anti-Semitism, there's a lot of racism, a lot of nationalism, a lot of white supremacy, a lot of Christian, sort of evangelical Christian nationalism, yeah, in there, that is kind of anti-Catholic. And so in a way, as some immigrants were like moving more towards where Republicans were moving, the party generally was moving off, keeping ahead of them, going off to the right. So I'm not sure, while they like to quote that statement of Reagan's, I don't know that it really applies that much anymore.
I would agree with you. But I would say not just the immigrants got left in the middle. A lot of Republicans got left in the middle. That is, as that minority moved the party to the right, a lot of traditional Republicans started, in the last couple of years, is starting to say, what happened?
Hmm.
I used to feel comfortable here, and I am no longer comfortable. Right?
Yeah. So I feel
So,
like this last election really highlighted a number of things, obviously. I mean, abortion was a big deal. But I think generally there were just a lot of people who were pretty uncomfortable with the direction of the Republican Party. And so they were like pulling back a little bit and not really, going all gung ho to the R side of things. And it was a big surprise to a lot of people, I suppose. It was sort of a surprise to me just because I kept reading, oh, it's a Republican wave, it's a Republican wave. And then when that didn't happen, I was like shocked and pleased. I have to admit, I was very
yeah,
pleased by that. But I was also surprised because election night, I just like, I'm not even going to look at the news. I'm just going to go to bed. I don't even want to, I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
want to
We
go
were
through that.
taking defeat very in resignation.
Yeah. I mean, I was remember shades of watching Trump win that election and just how miserable that made me. So I was like, I'm not doing that again. I'm just going to bed. I'll wait. There's nothing I can do about it. So I'll just wait till tomorrow and I'll just see the aftermath and just deal with it. And it was such a pleasant surprise that I'm still sort of like, really?
It was
Did
not
that work?
as big a surprise as when Hillary lost,
Yeah.
because that night I was in a whole different mood going to bed, and then realizing what I find interesting when that Trump uh, win came through was that it was not just a sad moment. Probably the biggest attendance to immigration forum meetings happened right after that election.
Yeah.
People were not just going to sit and take it. They wanted to do something about it.
Yeah.
And I was tickled to see so many people wanting to do something. We by now know, 4 years later, 5 years later, that it was that we could not sustain the resistance because it was so tough. No matter what we did, we were losing and losing and losing until the actual border shut down to zero, which we thought was not going to, there was just no way it was going to happen. So, Carolyn, that's my counter to your open borders won't ever happen. We don't know what will ever happen. Trump should not have happened, and yet it did.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So,
But I just don't hear any politicians advocating for open borders.
yeah, agreed.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I suppose I should mention, since we're doing this as a show here, both on the radio and TV, that um, we're not advocating Republican or Democrat, but we are personally responding to how we feel about how those parties have handled the immigration question. And as longtime viewers of the show will know, I have long wrestled with how to deal with partisan politics when I talk about things on this show, because there there is a party whose name starts with R, who has made a point, and made it an issue to be anti-immigrant in one way or the other, to varying degrees. But that has been their platform. That has been what they pursued, and so I am forced, even if I didn't want to be, even if I wasn't wanting to be a lefty or a Democrat, I'm forced to go in that direction simply because at least this is the party of, decency towards immigrants versus the party of let's, lock them out, let's lock them up, let's demonize them, pathologize them, let's treat them like, invaders. They're invading the border, that sort of thing. So I'm just saying that for anybody who happens to be listening and wondering, like, well, what is this, some kind of Democratic show? Not intentionally, not by choice, but by force of circumstances, I guess you might say.
Mhm.
So that's my little rant. Excuse me for interjecting that, but
And that too could change sometime in the future, but
it
it's
could
hard to
change.
see it right now.
Yeah, right now it seems almost like baked into the system, and it is at this time. But at some point in the future, that could change. As Ricardo was saying earlier, Republicans from Bush on back were pretty pro-immigration, and Democrats at one point were kind of anti-immigration because of unions, and they didn't like the importation of people who would be willing to work for less money than what unions were asking. But as unions started to become weakened and losing that force of control over the workplace, then Democrats started shifting their message, and
Well,
so.
this is maybe an opportune moment. There was an analysis. Let me see. Actually, it's on the Gallup website.
Hmm.
Uh, they're summarizing what they saw in their polling uh, when it came to immigration, and then how high immigration ranked as an influencer for those people that were voting.
Hmm.
Uh, and as you know, when Trump ran, he made it a big deal. The wall, and the Mexican rapists and all that. He. The topic had been hot enough, uh, but maybe it was on warm status before that. Then
Hmm.
he made it a hot topic. What I this and I'll share with you on screen again. Um, the This particular article tells us, and I guess I will first show you the top for the reference of where this comes from, so you can. I guess I could cheat, but it's not my intention to cheat. This is on Gallup.com, uh, and it talks. This is like a third of a fourth. Uh, Yeah, this is the third of a series of articles in which they talk about the big issues, abortion, and this is gun control and immigration. And if I can show you in big, uh, this September, it says here, uh, shows that 6% of Americans mention immigration as the nation's most important problem. 6%. Now, this puts it as the fourth most mentioned problem, uh, but it's pretty low.
Mm-hmm.
With Trump, 20% people put it that high up. So that coming down, of course, there's a difference between how people view legal immigration and illegal immigration, but uh, this I had forgotten of this particular item. The Gallup's trend question gives Americans three choices. Uh, would you like to increase immigration? Would you like to decrease it or keep it as it is? This is, I think, a Trump effect. 38% of Americans in most recent updates says immigration should be decreased. Uh, and I think that's still spillover from the Gallup. I mean, from the Trump years,
Mm-hmm.
uh, because it's still quite uh, high compared to what people used to think before that surge of the wall and all that junk. Uh, and now there's a lot of dissatisfied people with the border, uh, including Democrats. It's not just the base, the Republican right that is on it, because I think it's been evident Biden has, however well intentioned from some points of view, uh, they don't know what to do either. And so when the many people at the border started coming in and situations went awry across the world, they went back to some of the policies that were very widely rejected you know, pre-election, pre his election. So anyway, so this is that's one of the big points, and of course the border stuff and the busing of people, or the flying of people up. But then they mention, the illegal immigration part. And so they go into the beginning of this year on how it was still a topic. Uh, and there are two quotes here that stuck with me, that the 41% currently worried a great deal about illegal immigration. Uh, that was last April. And then as it comes down into more recent polling, um, people just want to stop people at the border. Where is it? People don't want a wall, but they do want something more done at the border. Yeah, 3/4 of Americans said increasing border security was very or somewhat important goal of that. So I thought that was well, maybe validate some of the thinking. The last section that they talk about is, what do you do with the people already here? And so in 19, 60% said deporting all immigrants who are living in the United States legally back to their home country. Uh, Again, another Trump position. Miller probably, right?
Mm-hmm.
Trump just followed whatever he says. He was just following somebody else's agenda. So, as you can see at the end, the summary basically, they want the laws enforced, but they don't want to deport their neighbor necessarily.
Yeah, there's a difference between the idea and the actual personal connections.
Yeah.
For this most recent election, there was a lengthy article in the New York Times saying that Democrats did not want to talk about immigration for this election, and they largely didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Just because, the Republicans were talking about it somewhat, but they just didn't even want to engage. And I think that's just because of the large number of people that have been coming over until Biden set the new policy on Venezuelans. Because that was viewed as a failure of the Biden administration. In my mind, and maybe I'm missing something, but in my mind, that just means the border control was working, that they encountered all these people,
Mm-hmm.
Because people are going to come. There's pulls and pushes, and the president and the head of Border Patrol, they can't control those things. At least that's the way I see it. But the perception is that if a lot of people are caught, the administration's doing something wrong.
Yeah, that's very strange. I don't know where that comes
To
from.
me, it's like, but it's working.
Yeah.
They're empowering people. That's what they're supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.